The date is February 20th, 1962. The time, 9:47 a.m. The voice you'll hear is that of John Herschel Glenn, 40-year-old Marine Corps officer, one of 7 Mercury astronauts. 2 of these astronauts have already reached space. Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom made short, successful flights down the Atlantic Missile Range from Cape Canaveral. Now it's time for the long voyage, 3 orbits around the Earth. The nation has suffered with John Glenn through 10 postponements, but today conditions are right. Glenn is lifted into the spacecraft that he named Friendship 7. He waits, flat on his back. The countdown moves into its final seconds. Listen now to the end of the count, the launch, and Glenn's first words.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
You're loud and clear.
Roger, we're programming and roll okay. A little bumpy along about here.
Roger. Stand by for 20 seconds.
Roger.
The tremble in Glenn's voice was caused by the tremendous shock of blastoff. Now, under smoother conditions, Glenn continues his report.
We're smoothing out some now, getting out of the vibration area.
Roger, you feel max Q, flight path is...
Roger, feels good through max Q and smoothing out real fine. Cabin pressure coming down by 7, okay, flight very smooth now. Sky looking very dark outside.
All Roger, reading you loud and clear, 7. Cape is go. We're standing by for you.
Roger, Cape is go and I am go. Our capsule is in good shape. Fuel 103, 102, oxygen 78,100. Cabin pressure holding steady at 5.8. Amps is 2.6. All systems are go. Indicating 6 Gs.
5 minutes after liftoff, Cape Canaveral confirms that Glenn is in orbit. Here is Glenn's reply.
Roger, 0 G, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around. Oh, that view is tremendous.
Roger, turnaround has started.
Roger, capsule turning around, and I could see the booster during turnaround just a couple of 100 yards behind me. It was beautiful.
Roger, 7. You have a go. At least 7 orbits.
Roger, understand go for at least 7 orbits. The Friendship 7 can see clear back a big cloud pattern way back across toward the Cape. Beautiful sight.
At orbit altitude, the force of gravity is 0. The human body becomes weightless. How will weightlessness affect our astronauts? Here is Glenn's first reaction.
We're all set. This is very comfortable at 0 G. I have nothing but very fine feeling. It just feels very normal and very good. Have very little dirt floating around in the capsule, just a little bit. And preparing to take xylo still at present time. This Friendship 7, the head movements cause no sensations whatsoever. Feel fine. Reach test, I can hit directly to any spot that I want to hit. I have no problem reaching for knobs and have adjusted to 0 G very easily, much easier than I really thought I would. I have excellent vision on the charts, no astigmatism or any malfunctions at all. I feel fine so far, over.
Roger, understand.
High over the Atlantic Ocean, Glenn sights another continent.
This is Friendship 7, have beautiful view of the African coast, both in the scope and out the window. Out the window is by far the best view. Part of the Canaries was hidden by clouds.
Gordon Cooper, another astronaut and close friend of Glenn, is in a tracking station in Australia. Listen as Glenn says hello.
Roger, how you doing, Gordo? We're doing real fine up here. Everything is going very well, over.
John, you sound good.
Roger, control fuel is 90100, oxygen is 75100, amps are 22. All systems are still go, having no problems at all. Control system operating fine, over.
Now, from 150 miles above Australia, a weather report.
The only unusual thing I have noticed is a rather high, what would appear to be a haze layer, up some 7 or 8 degrees above the horizon on the night side. The stars, I can see through it as they go down toward the real horizon, but it's a very visible single band or layer pretty well up above the normal horizon. Over.
The people of Perth, Australia, were asked to light up their city for Glenn. It was a test of night visibility from orbital altitude.
Shortly, you may observe some lights down there. You want to take a check on them out to your right, over?
Roger, I'm all set to see if I can't get them in sight.
Roger?
Roger, I do have lights in sight on the ground. Over.
Roger, I understand. They're just off to your right there?
That's affirmative. Just to my right, I can see a big pattern of lights, apparently right on the coast. I can see the outline of a town and a very bright light just to the south of it. On down.
And Rockingham, you're saying that?
Roger. The lights show up very well, and I'll thank everybody for turning them on, will you?
Sure will, John.
Very fine.
Mysterious bright particles followed Glenn's capsule. They later were explained to be electrically charged vapor given off by the capsule. But on February 20th, they were a puzzle. Listen to Glenn.
This is Friendship 7. Just as the sun came up, there were some brilliantly lighted particles that looked luminous that were swirling around the capsule. I don't have any in sight right now. I did have a couple just a moment ago when I made the transmission to you. Over.
Roger, Friendship 7. 7, Romus, if you have a chance, could you give us a blood pressure check? Over.
Roger, Friendship 7 will give blood pressure check. I still have some of these particles that I cannot identify coming around the capsule occasionally. Over.
Roger, how big are these particles?
Very small. I would indicate they're of the order of a 1/16 of an inch or smaller. They drift by the window, and I can see them against the dark sky. Just at sunrise, there were literally thousands of them. It looked like just a myriad of stars. Over.
Roger, are they moving by you or floating with you? Over.
Some of them float almost with me. Most of them appear to be moving at about 3 to 5 miles an hour away from me. I'm going just a little faster than they are. Over.
4 hours after liftoff, a light-hearted John Glenn makes this application for flight pay.
This is Friendship 7. In 45 more seconds, I'd like to have you send a message for me, please. Over. I want you to send a message to the director, or to the commandant, U.S. Marine Corps in Washington. Tell him I have my 4 hours required flight time in for the month, and request flight chip be established for me. Over.
I just wanted to think they'll pay it.
I don't know. Go find out.
Roger. This gliding time or rocket time?
Lighter than air, buddy.
Anxious moments now. Warning signals on the ground indicate that the capsule's heat shield is slipping. Here, controllers tell Glenn not to jettison his retro packet after firing his retro rockets. It's hoped that the metal bands around the retro packet will help hold the heat shield in place.
We are recommending that you leave the retro package on through the entire re-entry. This means that you will have to override the 05G switch, which is expected to occur at 04433. This also means that you will have to manually retract the scope. Do you read?
This is Friendship 7. What is the reason for this? Do you have any reason? Over.
Not at this time. This is the judgment of Cape Flight.
Roger, understand. I will have to make a manual 05G entry when it occurs and bring the scope in manually. Is that affirmed?
That is affirmative. Friendship 7.
Roger.
It's time to fire the retro rockets. They will slow down the capsule and position it for re-entry into the atmosphere.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
Roger. Retros are firing.
Yeah, baby.
Are they ever? It feels like I'm going back toward Hawaii.
Heading back to Earth, Glenn opens the capsule's main parachute.
Main chute is on green. Chute is out in reef condition at 10,800 feet and beautiful chute. Chute looks good. On O2 emergency and the chute looks very good. Rate of descent has gone to about 4.2 feet per second. The chute looks very good.
The capsule is within view of rescue ships now, as Glenn makes his final checks.
Ship 7, this is Steelhead. Correct my estimate on station. Estimate pickup now at 20 minutes, over. Roger, understand. 20 minutes to pickup. Ship 7, going through checklist.
Remain in capsule unless you have an overriding reason for getting out, over.
Roger, Ship 7. Ship 7, ready for impact, almost down.
4 hours and 56 minutes after liftoff, these final words.
Do you have me in sight? Ship 7, getting close, standing by.
Roger.
There we go. Ship 7, impact. Rescue aids is manual. Ship 7, this is Steelhead. Hold you in the water. What is your condition, over? Roger, my condition okay. Does the capsule look like it's okay, over?
The voice of John Glenn was transmitted to Earth over communications supplied by Collins Radio Company. Every American voice from space has been transmitted by Collins, and every manned spaceship that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration is scheduled to launch in the next 10 years will have Collins equipment aboard. Today, Collins is developing the radios that will transmit America's first on-the-spot reports from the moon. Looking farther ahead, Collins is studying communications for Saturn and other planets of the inner solar system. Watch for more news about these and other projects from Collins Radio Company.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thirty seconds. 30 seconds.
Roger.
20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Roll's completed.
Roger, roll complete.
There goes the pitch.
Roger, pitch. You're on your way, Molly Brown.
Yeah, man.
At 8:24 in the morning, on March 23, 1965, the Gemini 3 spacecraft Molly Brown was on her way. This was the first two-man space flight attempted by America, and followed on the heels of the successful series of Mercury flights. A few minutes after blastoff, at a velocity of 16,600 miles per hour, U.S. astronauts Major Virgil Grissom and Lieutenant Commander John Young inserted the Molly Brown into an elliptical orbit of the Earth, an orbit which at its apogee was 139.5 miles straight up.
We're a little bit high on the flight path, but no problem, Molly Brown.
Okay, Molly Brown's go for staging.
Roger, looks good from here.
Roger. Second update received.
Roger, update.
Okay, there was staging.
Roger, stage.
And we're thrusting.
Okay, thrust looks good from here.
Show full scale round to there. Okay, we're starting to steer. The horizon's got right in view.
Roger.
RTS is go.
Looks good from here.
Oh, man, look at that.
Steering is good from here.
Near the end of the first orbit, as the Molly Brown sped across the Pacific Ocean toward the California coast, Gus Grissom prepared for a change in the orbit.
Stand by to copy 2-1.
Roger.
Delta V 139. GMTRC 155547. GETRC 013147. Roll left 55. GMTRB 160531. Roll right 65.
Roger, copy Delta V 139, GMTRC 155547, AETRC 013147. Roll left 55. GMTRB 160531. Roll right 65.
Roger.
Mountain Island, Capcom. Go ahead. Roger, your Texas burn will be 48 feet per second for 73 seconds. Okay, 48 feet per second for 73 seconds. So far we got your TR and Gemini load in. Your clocks look good on the ground. Everything's go here. See you next trip.
Controlling his spacecraft with brief bursts of energy from the appropriate rockets, Grissom brought Molly Brown level. Then he fired 2 forward-pointing rockets for exactly 73 seconds. This slowed Molly down, and the apogee of her orbit dropped by 34 miles. The Molly Brown was now on an almost circular course.
Steering right down the old line.
That small change in the flight path of the Molly Brown was the first such change ever accomplished by any spacecraft, American or Russian, under any degree of manual control.
Molly Brown, Cape Capcom.
Go, Cape Capcom.
Look better from there than on a ballistic flight?
Say again.
Does it look better from there than on a ballistic flight?
I can't read the cargo.
Roger. How do it look?
It looks great.
Right.
And there was more to come.
Carnarvon, Capcom, Cape Flight.
This is Carnarvon, go ahead.
Ask him if any of the things we asked him to try did anything with the control system. I'm not concerned about it, just want to know how it acted. As far as we're concerned, he's go for the second orbit.
Halfway through the second orbit, as the Molly Brown passed high over the Indian Ocean, Grissom turned his ship at right angles to the flight path. In its new position, the spacecraft was still circling through the same orbit, but a burst of rockets moved the craft about a mile to the south, shifting the orbital plane. Grissom then turned the craft until it pointed down the track once more.
You still got a blood pressure, John? We didn't read it.
Hey, sir, okay, I'll give you another one.
Okay. Just wonder if he was breathing.
Gus Grissom had, in effect, made a right turn, driven a mile, and then turned left.
Pretty spectacular up there, huh?
Say again.
Pretty spectacular up there, huh?
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
On the third and final orbit, as the Molly Brown approached Hawaii, Grissom turned the craft completely around, blunt end forward, and fired 2 more rockets to reduce speed once more. The capsule went into a decaying orbit, and Grissom put his ship into the proper position for firing of its retro rockets.
RKV from Cape Flight.
Cape Flight, RKV, Capcom.
Roger, you are prime for retro.
Oh, Roger, understand.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Retro fire.
Manual retro. Manual retro. Rocket 3. Rocket 2. Rocket number 4. Molly Brown, you confirm all rockets fire normally? All rockets fire copy and attitude right in the center. Roger, pass your RVI readouts on the Glenn. Is RKV out?
During re-entry, Grissom flew his spacecraft manually, following a sharp downward curve.
Molly Brown, I have your backup times on bank angles and time to reverse bank angle.
No. Go ahead.
Bank left 4-5 degrees. Bank right 5 degrees. Time to reverse bank angle 190817.
At 85,000 feet, the parachute recovery system was initiated, and a few minutes later, the unsinkable Molly Brown splashed into the Atlantic Ocean, having completed an all but perfect mission. Astronauts Gus Grissom and John Young, by changing the course of their spacecraft 3 times, demonstrated that U.S. spacemen are well on their way to conquering the problems involved in getting a man on the moon. Since the flight of the Molly Brown, the necessary skills of maneuvering and docking spacecraft in flight seem more surely than ever within the reach of United States science.
30 seconds.
We've heard the actual transmissions of Gus Grissom's voice from space. Every American voice from space has been transmitted by Collins equipment.
20 seconds.
And all manned space projects planned will include equipment designed, developed, and built by Collins Radio Company.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.